So here we have it, equivalent fractions. We know that equivalent fractions are fractions that take up the same space. So for example, I have 1/2, so I'm going to do 1/2. 1/2 and 2/4. So 2/4 and 1/2 take up the same amount of space. So 1/2 is just one piece is used out of 2, and then 2 pieces are used out of 4. As you can see, they're taking up the same space. All right. Now, say I want to find the equivalent fraction using numbers. All right. What I'm going to do is 1/2 is equal to 2/4. I'm just going to simply list my multiples of 2 and 4, and then I'm going to circle the number that they have in common. Now they will have several numbers, so you will just circle the biggest number that they have in common. All right, so my multiples of 2 are 1 and 2. Simple. And then my multiples of 4 are 1, 2, and 4. Now the number that they both have in common is 2. So I'm going to circle the 2. And that is the number that I will use to either multiply or divide. So I'm going to multiply. I want to take my 1/2 and turn it into a, not a bigger fraction, but have my numerator and denominator have bigger numbers. All right, so I'm going to multiply 1 times 2 and 2 times 2. So 1 times 2 equals 2, and 2 times 2 equals 4. All right, now say I wanted to take my 2/4 and turn it into a smaller fraction, or have my numerator and denominator be smaller. I'm going to take that same 2 and divide it. So 2 divided by 2 and 4 divided by 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 4 divided by 2 is 2, making my fractions equivalent. Now the key to equivalent fractions is making sure that your numerator and denominator is either multiplied or divided by the same exact number. All right, so now I'm going to take the number 8/10. All right, I have 8/10. I want to reduce my fraction. Reduce or make my fraction smaller. That's what the word reduce means. Make it smaller. All right, so I'm going to list my multiples of both 8 and 10. Again, numbers, when I multiply them together, will give me 8. So I'm going to say my multiples of 8 are 1, 2, 4, and 8. Right? So for number 10, my multiples are 1, 2, 5, and 10. The biggest number that I see that they have in common is 2. So I'm just going to simply circle my 2. Now 2 is a number that I am going to use to reduce my fraction. So that means I'm going to divide my numerator and denominator by 2. So I have 8 divided by 2 is 4. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. Here's my reduced fraction. I cannot simplify or reduce this fraction anymore because 4 and 5 do not have any common numbers except for 1. All right? Now, if I want to find a fraction, another equivalent fraction that is that equals the same as 8/10 but have a bigger numerator and denominator, I'm simply going to multiply my numerator by 2, and multiply my denominator by 2. So 8 times 2 is 16, and 2 times 10 is 20. So there I have it, 2 fractions that is equal to 8/10 once I multiply or divide it. So like I said, in order to find your fraction to its simplest form, you have to divide. So you list all of your multiples, find the greatest number that they have in common, and you divide it by the numerator and denominator. If you want to find a fraction that has a bigger numerator and denominator, you simply multiply. All of these answers are correct. So don't think the answers are wrong. They're correct. They are both equivalent fractions. They will take up the same space. If you draw it out, like my 1/2 and my 2/4, they're equivalent. Equivalent meaning equal. They are the same.